was chilly last night. I woke up about 7:30 this morning, and it was cold here in the van. So instead of jumping right up out of bed, instead I got up and turned on my heater, my Olympian Wave 3 heater. And it's been about an hour. I've just been checking email and stuff. But now it's a little bit warmer here in the van. Quite a bit more comfortable. So I guess I can stop stalling, finally get up and start the day. So this is probably a good opportunity to talk about what I'm using for heat here in the van. I am using an Olympian Wave 3 heater, and yes, this is a propane heater. I don't talk much about this heater because this is a little bit of a touchy subject. I know that a lot of people are nervous about propane heat, and especially nervous about using a propane heater in a van. And I haven't had any issues with it. So I just don't talk about it much because, one, it makes people nervous, and two, I don't want to influence somebody to use something that they're not comfortable with. So this is just going to be a little informal walkthrough of why I use this Olympian Wave 3 propane heater, but I'm not trying to convince you to use it. So I didn't start out heating with this Olympian Wave 3 heater. I was using the buddy heaters, or Mr. Heater buddies, like most everybody else when I first started. But I had a lot of issues with those, and they were, I think, a little bit dangerous in my space. I think if you've got more space, if you're in a bigger van, or if you're using one to heat a garage space or something, those buddy heaters are probably a better option. But here for me, and I tried to choose a camera angle to give you kind of a good idea of the limited space I have here. This is a minivan. I have less than 35 square feet of space. I don't have a lot of open floor space. The only real open floor space I have is kind of where my tripod and phone are sitting right now, and it's not a lot. And so I just found that those Mr. Heater buddies just were too oversized for my little van. And I did have two different types of them. I had the standard one, and then I had the bottle top one. With this Wave 3 heater, you know, obviously I still have the space issues, but I found that with the form factor of this, I was able to mount it up on a flat panel TV mount, and that basically got it up off of the floor to get it away from my bedding and the walls and the ceiling. So it looks tight in here, and it is. I'm not going to lie about that. It is tight in here, but with this flat panel TV mount, it gives me just enough space off of my cabinet here on the wall, and just enough space off of my bedding, and just enough space off of the roof to make sure that nothing gets too hot. This has worked out really well. The only problem with this is I do need to remember to bungee cord it back to the wall, because if I don't, as I drive, it will slam around. But it's quite easy for me just to push this back, and I've got a bungee cord that I've got tied up around the back side of this, and it just bungee cords back to the van. It's not the best option, but it's an option to keep it stable, as long as I remember to actually do it. Now, the only problem I really ran into with this heater is getting a propane line with a shutoff on it, and I just couldn't find the parts that I was needing, and so I ended up buying a line with an included shutoff on it from Olympian, and I think I ordered it from Amazon, although I may have bought it at an RV store. It's been at least 4 years now. I don't really remember. But this line that Olympian sells kind of solves that little problem of trying to source the little parts for getting a propane line and a shutoff. So I do kind of recommend this, although it is really expensive. So if you can figure out a better way, might be better to save yourself a little bit of money. This is just the easier way. Now, the great thing about these Olympian heaters is that they are designed to run off of whatever propane bottle that you might have. So most people use these little green bottles. I keep a couple of these around just because I don't like to run out of fuel. I have two propane bottles that are 2 gallons in size, and I've got about 12 inches of space under my bed. So my bed sits about 12 inches off of my floor. So I found these 2-gallon bottles that actually slide under my bed, and so that's what I use. Now, it's been a while since I've used one of these propane bottles for much time, but I think think you get about 6 hours of use on low, if I remember right. You can always check Olympian's website if you are looking for more detailed information about that. Generally, with my 2-pound refillable bottle, if I'm running the heater all night, I think I get between 5 to 6 days of run time on that 2 gallons. To me, that's pretty good. It seems to be really efficient with propane, and I think, at least as far as I remember, it's a little bit more efficient than the buddy heaters. I was really trying not to mention the buddy heater too much, but really, whenever I talk about the Olympian heater, people like to compare it to a Mr. Heater Buddy, and since I've owned both, I can tell you that they're not anything alike. Really, they work very differently, and they give off very different amounts of heat. The buddy heater, when you turn it on, you get this big, huge blast of heat instantly. When you turn on an Olympian Wave heater, almost nothing happens for a few minutes. I would say it takes 8 to 10 minutes before you really start to feel heat coming off of the heater. To be honest, when I first got this and turned it on and started to use it for the very first time, I was slightly disappointed in the amount of heat that was coming off of it, because it was just such a low amount of heat. But then I realized that that's actually a benefit with this heater. If you want a propane heater that's just going to run all night, this is a much better way to go. With the buddy heater, I really couldn't run it all night. After about an hour, it would be about 100 or 110 degrees in the van here. I would shut it off, and 30 minutes later, it would be freezing in here. But with this, if I run this just on low, just leave it on low, I can run this all night long. And because it's just giving out this gentle heat, it just keeps the van nice and warm, and I don't have to worry about getting overheated. I don't have to worry about something catching on fire. It's just a better type of heat if you want a heater that is just going to keep your van warm for a longer period of time, say all night. Now, one of the really surprising aspects with this Wave heater is that even though it's a propane heater, it doesn't fill my van full of moisture. And that was a problem I've had with other types of heat I've used before I had this heater. I would always wake up to just water dripping off of the ceiling and everything. Once I got rid of those heaters and switched to this Wave heater, I don't have any issues with moisture anymore. In fact, I found that on days that I maybe was hiking in the rain and I had a bunch of wet clothes, if I would run this heater all night, it would dry out the clothes and everything would be dry in the morning. That's something that I never had before with the other types of propane heaters I've used. They've always left the van really wet. With this Wave 3 heater, if I run this, everything dries out. I found that even in the Pacific Northwest, when it was always a little bit damp and everything was just kind of damp in here, I would just run the heater all night and everything would be dried out and dry in here, even though everything was sopping wet outside. I should mention that I do have very good ventilation in the van, and that's probably maybe one of the reasons that I don't have any issues with running propane or any moisture issues, is because I do have a floor vent and I do have a roof vent, and those stay open all the time. I don't care if it's 120 degrees outside or if it's 15 degrees outside. These vents stay open always. Now, if you're wondering why I don't use one of the air heaters like a Webasto or one of the knockoff ones, those, I'm not against those. It's just that those aren't really a viable option for me right now. Again, because of the floor space of my tight little van here, I don't really have space for one. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't be able to use one. It would just be hard to find a space to put one. I've actually considered putting one in a box and mounting it on the outside of my door. That would be a really easy way to do it. I could mount a box on the outside of my door, put one of those air heaters in the box, just drill a hole for the air vent into the van. That would work. I have looked at that. I have stayed away from the air heaters, not because I don't like them. I don't really have enough battery power or solar to run one of those. And this is the one thing that I don't think people quite think through. My kind of limited solar power electric system here in the van is basically based around my fridge. So I have plenty of power for my fridge and the power for other things that I need, which is very minimal. But if I were to add a heater that used power all night long, that would mean I would need at least one more solar panel and at least one more battery. But it doesn't stop there, because if I'm heating my space and keeping my space warm all night long, that's going to mean my fridge, which is my main source of battery draw, that means my fridge is going to run longer, cycle on more than it does normally. So that would mean that my fridge is going to consume much more power than it normally consumes. You know, normally at night it's cooler. Wherever I am, it's normally cooler at night and the fridge doesn't cycle much. And that works out really well. That's kind of the design of my electrical system here, is that at night it's cool, the fridge isn't going to run much, and that's good because I don't have sunshine hitting my solar panel, charging my battery. But if I threw one of those air heaters into the mix, that means that I not only have to think about the amount of electricity that the air heater is going to use, but I have to factor in the extra runtime that my fridge is going to need. So that's just kind of why I've stayed away from the air heaters. And again, not that I'm against them, they're just not right for me at the moment. I will say though that if I ever do get one of those air heaters, I would still have the Wave heater as a backup. The nice thing about this is that it doesn't need electricity, or all you need is a propane source, a fuel source. I like that. I like having the idea that I've got heat, even if everything else goes bad and, you know, I don't have any power, I still have heat. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight on why I've chosen to use this Olympian Wave 3 heater. It's just the best solution for me. And again, I'm not trying to convince anybody to buy one of these. I'm just telling you what I'm using and telling you why I'm using it. That's really just the purpose of this video. And, you know, different vans, different setups, different lifestyles, you might need a different heater. This is just the one that has worked best for me for the last 4+ years now. So anyway, hope you've found this helpful. And as always, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.